My family and I lived at a property called Gladstone Villa in the former mining town of Bargoed in the South Wales Valleys during the 1970s. We experienced phenomena that simply defied rational explanation. We heard footsteps in the main bedroom when we would all be downstairs watching television. Living in the property were my maternal grandparents, my mother and myself. My dad left Gladstone Villa in 1972 when I was just 3 years old, and my parents eventually divorced in April 1975. My mother told me the noises started off in the attic soon after I was born, and whatever it was eventually moved itself into the main bedroom, which was incidentally my grandparents' room. We would hear the footsteps in the bedroom every evening, sometimes during the day. A family friend, Mrs. Ivy France, who would visit the family, did not believe my grandmother at first when she told her it was haunted, saying that the noises were caused by the vibrations from the traffic outside. However, one evening, Ivy had her belief system challenged when she finally experienced the noises for herself. Ivy then suggested contacting the local press, but my grandmother refused for fear of ridicule. Mrs. France said she knew of a medium, and he eventually came to Gladstone Villa. At first, the medium began by asking questions. He then started challenging the entity to perform by knocking on the ceiling to see if he would get a reaction. And sure enough, the spirit promptly knocked back at him. At one point, the medium went into a trance to try and make contact. He didn't get a name, but he later confirmed the obvious, that there was indeed a presence there. He said it was an earthbound spirit. A priest was also called, and he blessed the property, and he said some prayers, and it was quiet for a few short months. However, the spirit returned with a vengeance, and this time it decided to show itself. One evening, my mother, grandfather, and I were watching television. My grandmother was reading a book on the settee when my mother just happened to look towards her to see the figure of a monk standing behind the sofa near the doorway. We didn't see the figure, as my grandfather and I was watching television and my grandmother was reading a book, but she later described it in detail as a figure with typical brown habit with a hood over the head. There were more sightings after that, and the noises continued. One afternoon, I remember my mother going towards the settee to get something when she looked to her left toward an open door that led to the hallway. I saw the expression on her face, one of confusion, as if she had seen someone. She told me she saw an old man with white hair looking into the living room. She said it was a face she didn't know. There was also some minor poltergeist activity. I recall one day my grandfather coming into the living room from upstairs with a broken bottle. He said it was thrown towards him, just missing him by inches. I didn't actually witness this, but I'm inclined to believe him. There were more incidents, but we didn't hear the strange sounds all the time. We lived relatively normal lives. When we did, we would turn the TV down to hear the sounds more clearly. It sounded like someone walking about the bedroom. My grandfather would try to point out exactly where it was by saying, "He's by here. He's by there now." We had the ghost for so long that my grandmother gave it a name. She called him Johnny. My grandfather sometimes would mock the spirit by shouting, "Johnny-O!" but nothing would happen. We left Gladstone Villa in June 1978 after two local businessmen bought the property. It was eventually converted into a hotel, and it was renamed Red Park Hotel. I had my 40th birthday there for old time's sake, and the staff told me of the ghost before I said anything. I told them I lived there in the 1970s, and they told me of their own personal experiences. Johnny the Ghost is still there, apparently. There have been sightings in Room 5. What I have said here is true, and I wouldn't say this if I couldn't possibly back up